I'd like to call the meeting to order and remind everybody that although it is a regular meeting of the LEOFF Plan 2 Design Board, this meeting is a little different in that we're off-site for a reason. Typically we have some fairly structured agendas that we kind of adhere to, and they're more presentations. They're not necessarily as interactive as we hope this one will be for you. So let me remind everybody here that at times I could probably be a little too, I'm going to be kind to myself here, say too organized with our meetings, and they kind of go a little quicker maybe than we give time for discussions and questions. And this meeting in particular is designed so that we have a lot more interaction. This meeting was put together based on, or the agenda anyway, was put together based on the expectations, conversations that all of you, I believe everybody had with Steve. And so I hope that everybody will engage and follow up with some of those expectations you had in your conversations with Steve. We'll have breakouts. I'd like to see everybody participate to a great extent. And again, these aren't going to be presentations today. They're interactions, group interactions. We hope that we healthy and productive, and sometimes maybe even hearty debates in our discussions with our breakout groups. That's what it's designed for today. It's being off-site, we don't have a lot of guests here. We don't, just one in fact so far. So please try to participate, ask a lot of questions. I know at our formal meetings, maybe it doesn't feel like sometimes we can ask a lot of questions or even a lot of discussion, but here I think it's a little more relaxed atmosphere, and I hope that everybody feels comfortable in doing that, and I encourage everyone to ask as many questions as possible. It's a great environment for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve, and hope that everybody enjoys our day today. And I, for one, will be leading by example and putting my phone away. So, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I'll be happy to answer questions, but we're not going to go into detail about questions. Kind of keep in mind, how are we going to measure whether this meeting was a success? Yeah. We're here today to listen to you. Is that you guys will be able to clarify and reach agreement, and staff, the team here, clear direction from you. So that's sort of the challenge. The goal is to reach agreement, reach consensus. To begin with, we've got the brief review of the expectations here, or are you doing the I'll do the exercise after that. All right. For materials, you've got a handout that compares it's called the comparison kit. It is graphically represent just high level of scores from last year and this year in the 7 categories. Again, this is high level. It's just an average of all of the scores to visually represent some of the change. Categories in which your expectations are most kind of remain the same. Support our policy decisions, all satisfaction of how are you satisfied with the way the plan is being governed. Lowest categories from last year were help us get up to speed as soon as possible and keep us informed. And also now the 2 categories where we see the most positive change. That helps us come up with some of the initiatives that we did in the last year to try and address some of these expectations that have been. The lowest scoring category now is educate the plan stakeholders. However, even though that's the lowest category, the average score on that is about 4.3, recognizing that at least in all of the categories of your A, I know how difficult it was for you guys to take meetings. All of you made time. You didn't know how helpful they were being, how helpful some of those meetings, but they are. And many of you will see comments. The rope plan.
Thank you.
So, good to see everybody again. It's been a year since I was here last. Now, the exercise is going to be a brief one, but then I'll help facilitate the 4 work sessions. All of you have, what some of the feedback has been is to find opportunities to get to know each other better as board members. Having the breakfast is a good way to do it, the lunches, the breaks, so forth. But we thought, let's just take a few minutes and ask a question and get some of your insights about something that's at least purposeful. And all of you have committed a considerable amount of time in becoming a board member. And so we're wanting to ask you to share what has been most fulfilling for you with the rest of with everyone here, most fulfilling being a board member for you. And so I'll just open it up for anybody to start if they want.
It was the opportunity to learn more about the pension plan that I've been a participant in for when I first started over 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, Mark, I think it's, for me, it's been the way that the board communicates it all. And secondary to that, I guess, or the outcome of that, for me, is...
But I think really what a big difference you guys have all made. So, what has been kind of key to working, the way you work together? What has been some of the things that have made that work so well?
easy to it, and also, I guess, the fact that we have learned a lot through the...
On Mark. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, it's probably the proudest moment is the success we've had. A couple years back, we're talking about being rated #1 active retirement system best funded in the country by NASRA. Those are the type of things that don't just avoid the question of whether or not we're going to be responsible once we have this authority. Remember that when they talked about, oh my God, now the cops are going to give themselves, the fire are going to give themselves all kinds of benefits here, and the foxes in the hen house, all this kind of stuff. And it turns out that we've actually been more fiscally prudent than all of us can combine. And when you transition from the Joint Committee on Pension Policy with Joe Mallard and some of the issues that they had over the last 20 years here of the deferred funding, and actually made dang sure that we just had a solid foundation to work from here. Not all the bells and whistles or that's a...
Is there anything you would point to as being a key factor for that?
Well, one thing comes to mind, and it has to do with the stability of staff. I mean, Kelly, you've been here since the beginning, and Jack. I mean, I remember all the way through here, so we have an institutional memory right from the very beginning here, along with a bunch of years of frustration. That brought us to the point where it's only passed. We had Ted Campbell stand up and just say, enough of this crap. And here, I mean, there's a depth of institutional memory that goes with it. And we've had a couple of people move in and out, but you just had that core to stay with us, that's also developed that institutional memory work. There's
Only that, but being able to make this a fiduciary model, to educate and be patient with us.
Kind of a lot of this is, all the difference you're making, the success you have, and a lot of it is also kind of all the people you're working with, right? Your team, your staff, your other teammates, in effect, I would say. I'll take that as you're ready.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
The question is, what has been, you've committed a lot of time to being a board member, and what has been the most fulfilling aspect for you of being a board member?
Well, since I'm not a left one recipient, I don't get any of the warm fuzzies all this stuff. And having the boxes getting along with the hand and all that. But what has been, it's been more of a personal, I guess, a personal accomplishment. Our role. I mean, technically, you come in here as an employer, and the most expensive employees you've got are the answer on everything that's left. And so you come to a group where your obligation is none other than to support all the left employees in the state to the very best of your ability.
Don't go gushy on us now. Come on.
Wait, is the recorder on?
But beyond that, I mean, there is a role for employers in this. It felt, was right from the beginning, it felt, I can't always, as my other life, I can't always support the goal. Like, on the committee, I always have an appropriate role that is for the end of that. Sometimes that role is no more than saying, timing might not be good on this one. That's as close to no as I've ever been tempted to get here. And I take it, even in the most,
Are you going to say something? Oh, you wanted to. Okay, great, thanks, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say, to me, it's most rewarding, I think.
So, the thoughtful consideration, what has been the most effective way you think that you guys have been doing this thoughtful consideration? For everybody.
Well, for me, it's been everyone's...
Tammy put this up, which I like this, that was me when I was younger. But people find, this thoughtful consideration by listening to the considerations, and this is a phrase that came out of a book called The Lost Art of Listening. People find clarity in the presence of a receptive listener, and it's only when you're really listening to someone that you can find, but that they can find clarity and understanding. It's amazing how we're talking with our spouses or whatever, and it's kind of like, I didn't want you to solve it for me, I just wanted you to listen so that I could help find it myself. And anyway, it might be kind of an appropriate opportunity, based on what you said, to bring that up and to do the work. But, okay, thank you. David?
I was just going to add on to this part a little bit, because we're not part of the left to actually be employee. That's the biggest thing that we are about is public safety. Talk about, or they have long conversations about things that are important to them.
That's fine. Okay.
I think for me it goes back 11 years when we first started this stuff. But I think it's leadership. We have a great staff, but without the leader, it doesn't matter if it's a staff. Remote control. I know they got my back, and I think they
Your extensive experience.
I don't have the extensive experience, but I think what impelled me the most to be a part of the board is the fact that when you look at the historical success, and I guess a little bit on the selfish side is the knowledge. Everybody seems, they have a retirement system, but they're almost afraid to work.
That's a great phrase. Everybody wants to be part of a winning team. Isn't that the truth, right? How many people are watching Mariners games? I think they're over, right? But, and this has been a winning team, right? So, thank you, everybody. So we're going to start the workshops. And did everybody receive the worksheet, a week ago probably, about the work breakout group? So, Pat, you didn't get it? I have copies if you didn't, okay? We're basically, the format of these is going to be, we're going to organize you into two groups, 5 and 5, and we've got that all set up to how we want to do that. One group's going to be back there, one group's going to be here. We're going to ask you to take about 20 minutes and talk amongst yourselves. If it takes longer, let's let it take longer. As Steve said, the most important thing is to hear, so the staff wants to hear your thoughts on this topic. And these topics came from your input, your interviews with Steve and other sources. And it says, these are the top 4 issues or challenges that need to be addressed right now. The first one, basically a summary of it, is board members have expressed different opinions and ideas about what makes a meaningful meeting. Some favor a higher level bullet points approach to keeping the meeting shorter. Others prefer more discussion and conversation of policy issues raised. More discussion and direction on this issue would help improve staff preparation for meetings. So they boiled it down to one question, and the question being, what does a successful board meeting look like to you? And then they put some considerations on here too. They're not, it's not an agenda for you to think about, but it's like, okay, some topics, why are you having the board meeting? What's the purpose of the board meeting? What's the duration you want? What are the breaks? What should the more board member involvement be? Are you using it to make decisions? And so, let's focus on the question, if you would, what does a successful board meeting look like to you? And the groups, so I'm going to ask group 1 to be back at that table, and Jim, Wally, Jeff, Mark, and Jack. And group 2 will be here, it'll be Kelly, Pat, Glenn, David, and Ken. So, let's say at 25 after, would you write your results down on the easel and then be prepared to share with the group? So I'll hand these out to you. So this group was done first, so let's let them start. Who's going to be their spokesperson? Mark? Okay, good. Sure. And let's make sure everybody's here.
I don't have any. I got nothing.
Some people are really good at those.
On the record.
Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Okay,
So, what we did is we tried to focus on the question here, and then some of the other issues we just went through, and that sort of supports what purpose. What does a successful board meeting look like to you? Part of it's an educational piece, so we thought that was a very appropriate constituent part of what a successful meeting is. The actuaries come and talk to us from time to time. Not that the whole meeting should be taken up with the educational piece, but that supports what we're really there to do, which is to make policy decisions. And that's what.
So is education right now a component in every board meeting? Some component? What percent of the meeting is education? When you actually do it. So is that by half?
In our discussion, it was kind of like, I don't think it's that much, and I think it's too much. So it was subjective to the audience.
I guess it depends on your level of experience in education.
Maybe 100% every time you go in there.
97, you've been a free meeting.
Making some headway.
Okay, but it's almost like having education as a regular component. Someplace it could be just a brief thing, but what can we, who needs to know what at this point? And it could be 10% of that meeting, or it could be 50%.
And it's different to the extent that
Part of it too is formal educational, things we actually have that are pieces out there that are putting to deal with here, but we need to have in a body of knowledge. And there's the formal aspect of education.
That's interesting. Go ahead.
Because I'm afraid you guys are going to want to cut back.
No, on the other hand, it's a testament to somebody's lack of desire to learn.
just on the side, okay, as a select committee member, I
Yeah.
have to say, there's no shortage of actuaries.
You're getting double duty between being on both the select committee and the elected board.
Is there a difference between, just for, when you plan the meetings, is there a difference to say we are actually learning something, and other is we're briefing, is that bringing it up to date? So,
Oh, that's part of what a successful meeting looks like, is an educational component. Talk about sort of what drives the content of the meetings. Part of that is the subject matter, what we're talking about. So in terms of the length of the meetings themselves, so a successful meeting to us is that what the subject matter we're looking at, and that ties into this point here, which is baseline on the priority issues. So we're looking at what happened last legislative session. That's a natural function, I think, of how we operate. So we take stock of what happened last year, sort of figure out where we want to move. Most of this has to do with, frankly, it has to do with legislation, right? That's the whole point, is what things are we going to move forward, what things are we not going to move forward, depending on the economy. That's the priority issues, and all those things play into it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how this moves forward. One of the things we talked about is sort of grouping potentially maybe subject, the things that are interrelated, and so going in subject matter issues. So this month we will look at these things that are closely related.
Meetings are driven by the subject matter. The subject matter is driven by the legislative activity that we're thinking about considering. Last one here is we talked also about during the time when we're not having meetings, because depending upon if it's a short session or a long session, we
Part of the work session today is to have a little bit more in-depth discussion on that topic.
yes, that's kind of what drives that, and we think that's appropriate. It's kind of happening already, and so that is a sort of captures what is successful already that we do. Things are adequate. The discussion format we thought was adequate and functional, so those things I think are we're doing business already. So this is one of the things that we talked about that has improved when we looked at this is sort of aren't any surprises, that the communication is open. That's important to have a successful board meeting look like that, so you don't and part of that has to do with I think the staff does a very good job, but I think we discussed the fact that board members need to be responsible to make sure you come prepared. A component of a successful meeting when you're not sitting there, and frankly, they always make sure that we have that information. First of all, the information is prepared and in-depth, and so if you really take the time, and depending upon what that's good, and that's what helps it be a successful board meeting as well. Support the board. Not to say that there's not adequate debate, or that you can't have disagreements, or have a discussion, we have the debate, we make a decision, and then we all feel bound to support that. And
Did that happen?
Out here, no, that did not happen. On the left one conversation, we had that was a big issue.
Okay.
It's kind of older, but it was a year ago, but that was not.
it has to do with this piece up here a little bit.
I think it deals with how we have conversations and debates. We have open, true debates in our meetings, and we kind of focus on.
So, okay, so we'll hear more about that over there. It sounds like, that, in general, I mean, when you talk over here on your time, is it topic that's kind of a big topic. Once everybody collaborates on a decision, even if there's disagreements, that we all represent that decision, at least in do you see, the role of the board, there's the education, the briefing, the planning, part of it is decision making. Is at the end of every board meeting, are you making decisions?
We're making decisions about policy issues, whether we'd like to bring them back for more, for more information. I mean, there's a real regimented series of steps.
That are proven and working, and everybody's enjoying that or appreciating.
A good point. It didn't work that way as well in that subject, but
You take a general statement and you pick one issue and you say, here's an even in consideration of the change that happened in that vote. What we're sort of talking about was that there's a board consensus about what happens there, and it doesn't mean that things aren't going to change, or that there's not going to be fist fights behind closed doors at times. I mean, that's done consistently, and it doesn't matter what the issues might become. We've acted as a unit, we've acted as a team here, so, and yet you go behind closed doors. That is accurate in a structural sense, but that one situation you're talking about there, and presented on the outside, that didn't present well. But we did present as a whole and come back out of it.
Our public board. We should have those conversations in public. And I'd like to have more, I think our little group had more conversation about the big issues in the next 5 years and I think the public would appreciate hearing. If they start one board, and even if it's different disagreements, coming to the legislature, with a clear purpose that we can have one voice, and I think that's where the board wants to be. And I agree with that.
But I've always been, when I served on boards, I always felt like if I had a strong
I've always felt that what the senator expressed there is, there might be an expectation of dynamics. We have that sometimes with our group. I thought you had, but they expressed it in the board or there. It's like, maybe you need to be a part of a different board than this one. So
it's good to have different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. In the debate, I 100% agree, and I think it's useful. And when we turn around and now we face the legislature, it's kind of hard to have a solid legislative environment. That's sometimes all it takes to kind of undermine our objectives.
So, and so it kind of goes back to a little bit to the decision-making process, you know, that you've been, is there a set, you know, are you facilitating the decisions, and is there the shared decision-making process? We have a decision-making process that you're using, because this is how we make it.
It exceeds all of it.
But just to follow your point, that you could go to the weeds on it so damn quick, but there's so many different aspects of this. One of the big for you, I mean, we've been so successful.
It's great, I mean, there's a lot of topics.
It's the in-depth research.
Informed, well-vetted, discussed,
Out to a lot of states.
yeah.
So I think you could just go back to the strategic.
A lot of things for staff so far, we don't get you guys that are supportive of the things you're already doing, and they've already given you a number of accolades. But let's go to this group over here. Who's going to share with you guys?
Oh, okay. Who's doing that? This is, we answered the question directly. What is a well-run meeting or effective meeting? Decisions made expeditiously.
What does a successful board meeting look like to you?
That is a board meeting where decisions are, for us, if it's not between 8 and 5, nothing's happening, because that's when everybody else is around to meet with, and that's all. We were sitting there kind of whining about, well, you know, shorter meetings. But through the conversation, acknowledge that this seminar function is going to fit within these. It could happen in, you know, more like this. As employer members, you know, we probably bring you in. You don't go behind those closed doors, you guys do. And we sit out here and go, what do you think those guys are doing? Happened over that weekend. And we know that, and it's actually normal. That is how boards function. We acknowledge that. The issue of going forward with the consensus, I think it's a little bit like the word consensus itself. It's not unanimous. So most of the time, most of us go forward with a consensus on what everybody else thinks. Maybe not, and that's probably okay.
I took some notes here that I just wanted to make what it is that we're doing. Are we policy? Are we operational? You know, and those are the two, I think, points we asked ourselves. Or, you know, we maybe didn't go through that process. We didn't document it.
Didn't define it.
Right. So let me ask you a question, David. You know, like on this, clearly, you know, you're looking at on certain situations. Is that for you because of a different perspective? Is that not the situation that you have? Is it more of are the people that maybe are ready to be?
I'll just put it down there, I'm becoming facetious a little bit.
Right.
And I think other people, you know, we all we're very committed to our fiduciary responsibility, and what that means is things like that. And so, you know, for me, for a whole day, is that I have evening meetings every night.
Right.
And so, it's just, you know, I place on the real conversation. In our 20-minute conversation, we were talking about what was the goal of the plan, talking about the, you know, the fiscal responsibility, but there's 3 other goals that we have, of improving benefits, of doing these things. Well, I'd love to have that conversation with the 11 members, so that we don't, that you can also understand from where I'm coming from. And so that's the conversation I think that when I work with, I work with boards, and I try to make sure that they get off the dais. Because the dais is decision making. And that's that last thing.
Right. And that's kind of what
the time that's away from the dais is around the table in small groups, finding your perspective. I think it's real, you know, I feel bad that Pat and I have been able to carpool down, and I missed my carpool this morning because I was a little bit late. But that's great conversation. Because they bring a completely different perspective of where things were 15, 20 years ago. I don't have that. I also bring a different perspective because I'm negotiating contracts with not just firefighters and police, but with Teamsters and other non-reps. I bring a different perspective, and I think that's an important perspective for you all to hear too. And so those conversations don't happen. And if I was thinking about meetings, I would try to find out, you don't have to have all this happen in the same meeting. You can carve out, you know, we're going to spend 2-3 hours on one topic. And then we can have that conversation. What other research do we need to make that decision? So those are the kind of things I was thinking about. I think the meetings have gotten very standard about security, there's a little bit of education, lots of PowerPoints thrown at us, and as we're trying to run out the door, make a couple decisions, and boom, we're done. There's probably some from that.
Yeah, I think one of the things,
Well, I wanted to underscore one of the things there, is we have a lot of conversations. And what I gleaned from the conversation, there's a difference. I think that we want to make sure everybody knows that we don't feel it to be a goal, but what else is there? And so we started talking about, well, what we'd like to see, 4, 5, 6 years down the road is the potential for some. We've been around long enough to where I think all of us think that everybody knows that is one of the goals of the board. But we never really have had real conversations about that, it's just openly saying, yes, that's one of the goals. And, here are, maybe we have real conversations about, well, how do you get there? Because the first thing that an employer looks at is, well, it sounds like it's going to cost something to me. So I got to be real cautious about saying I can't afford to pay more. So real conversations. We haven't had those for a little while because that hasn't been the focus of what's been going on in our environment. It's been more about how do we keep what we have, not even looking at what we might be able to accomplish.
Part of the, one of the breakout sessions is about what do we do, and this kind of discussion, I don't know if that's the right timing or not, but that might be. I kind of was sitting here, and I was hearing this was pretty serious conversation going on at so, as far as lunch, when is lunch coming?
We get a 10-minute break now.
Right, I took a 10-minute break, but I was looking at the time. What time is lunch?
It'll be ready to serve between 12:15 and 12:30.
Okay, so let's come back at 11:30. We'll do the next breakout session, and then
this, we felt answered every one of those questions. What we felt matters.
it doesn't matter the quorum. Okay. Like you normally have your board meetings on certain days. Would it be on those dates? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, one of the things that we discussed is that we feel that there's a value in that time, instead of going 3 to 5 months without.
I just don't want to add some meat.
With the understanding that this is not for policy decision-making, done. This is education or growth, or providing information to the members. Sorry to interrupt you. Bringing in outside training, and some of the International Foundation education, or, can we Skype, can we video, what are, not just having, not only having the staff and their expertise.
So you mentioned right away, when you talked about the education, about the topics, maybe the top 3 topics right now that would fit the same.
3 topics might be totally different, David.
Okay, so let's hear some of them, though, just for the staff who for everybody going to get
We've touched on a lot of topics over the past 10 years, staff and some of the research. There are other retirement systems in the nation we compare to doing that we're not. As far as benefit-wise, one I discussed was like drop programs. We looked into drop programs in the past. Medical insurance for left to retirees. So we're not charged with medical insurance for our retirees. It directly impacts how long we're working. And our members, that's probably the number one consideration before they're configuring retirement, is they're thinking about the medical they're going to have to pay for them and their spouse.
Absolutely. Okay, David, you had some topics?
No, I think those are the different things, I think, is as we look 3 to 5 years or trying to do these things, is what information, and what I kind of put in different groups. One was, what do I need to know as a board member, that fiduciary responsibility? What do I need to know about the plan within the state of Washington and compare that to other plans or things like that? And then going outside, how does that plan compare to other things that are going on in the nation, or how do we compare? So I got and that would all be helpful, and I said, you know, it's good to have data to make the decision. We don't want to argue about the data. So this would be a way to get that data, so when we have decisions later on, it's informed by that. And so this is a great time for that research, the learning part, so that come fall or things like that, that's
Would you, go ahead. But the issue, what issues? What is the strong public meeting law rules? We may have a quorum. The attendees may be a quorum.
And accidentally have a meeting when you create a form. I think that if the information is shared with you, and I'm thinking, you could come to the meeting.
These would all be public meetings. I don't think there's any.
If you have a meeting, then give it as an announcement.
I think we kind of got probably a little bit laid out a little different premise here. We're just saying we're having regular meetings, and the reason why we've canceled meetings in the past, we don't have a quorum, so we just say we're going to cancel it. We know that 2 legislative members are not going to be available, potentially a couple of the other members who work for associations. So rather than create an opportunity, we cancel the meeting. So I think that's where we're going with this, is listen, we have a regular meeting. It's not structured to have policy decisions made, it's structured to have questions that need to be answered.
And then the flip side, and you guys have a policy, I believe, on, people call me, but there's nothing legally that would prevent you from having a policy that allows you.
I think it would be a nice way to try things out, is to learn how to, I don't know if Skyping or videotaping or things like that. I'm in some organizations that are trying that out, and they don't have it here, but I feel like any time that I've tried to interact with a meeting, it never works. So we need to learn that better, and this might be a way to try that out. Some people videotape, and then you can watch it on your own whenever, if it's information gathering or things like that. There may be other ways, and I know that when we started videotaping our council meetings, we improved our public participation, and if one of our goals is stakeholder involvement, they want to know what we're doing, well, they can go at 2 o'clock in the morning and they can watch our meeting. It's a public meeting, come and see what we're talking about. That would increase, as a board member, to our stakeholders as well.
You're small enough as far as the number of people on the board that in using, some guys, but they're seeing the material, listening, and then other people could sign in but be muted. I think the technology, I've been through quite a few of those. If it's educational, especially, it should be able to work, I would guess. Any additions, Glenn, or?
We talked about what we might be able to get from larger, or also talked about federal legislation. There's been a lot of it, and it affects, and the private sector legislation is spilling over onto the public sector. We ought to know about that. GASB and what Moody's is going to do, and that's not a lot by folks that are, we're running almost $1 billion project. What if you guys want to start polling? Real polling. Not just, go ask members and whoever responds, but poll, have a sample frame, poll the public. You really want benefit improvement? How's the public going to like that? Is worth doing. Those are all the kinds of things we talk about. I don't know if any of those are grand ideas, but I think that if you want to use that time during session, and David mentioned significantly to him that he likes that continuity. There's a certain, I think we can all come in and make decisions after 5 months, but there's that engagement that you can provide if you have something that folks are at least run by and they then during the session. That's everything.
Oh, great, good stuff. Okay, who's going to talk for your group?
We didn't get that much into we just mostly focused on legislative updates. I think the consensus of our group really was that we really don't need meetings. I don't think we would have an objection to have educational opportunities, but in terms of having meetings and making policy, it's too complicated. The legislative session is way too fluid for us to try to get in there and make decisions or interact with the legislature somehow. So it was easy for us. Communications and if the staff has training that would be useful to them at that point, we can see
no problem with that. And I think Jack said, clearly it's critical for the staff to have that, the experts, and they help us understand what our responsibilities and the technical aspects of what we do.
So it sounds like it's not going to be, it's not a policy-making time, it's not, that kind of thing. So it's really going to be topical, educational or brief, whatever. And so, you mentioned a lot of different topics. And so if there were, it's like, how much notice do you need? Would you do it for one person? Would you do it for two people? Let's say there's not a quorum. And so you said, let's say it's three people, you're still going to have it, but it's going to be training. Is that practical?
I'd suggest that it may not be practical, but it's possible because I can come in and talk to any one of the staff members one-on-one, and they're willing to do that for us. So if we had three people come in, that's 3 times as many.
Okay.
They've done it before. At this one, there's a little more preparation. So I think that as a board member and as a chair, I'd like our board members to be more cognizant of the staff time it takes to try to prepare a meeting for 10 people and only have 3 show up. Then it's, I think, a resource issue that we plan for 10 people and, do we do lunch, do we do any of these other things? And, so I think we need to be careful about that. But my expectation is that if I wanted to plan something and say I need to know more about this, Steve would either designate someone or do it himself. So I think whether he does it for me or whether he does it for 3 people or 5 people, I think it's possible.
And so if you could make a list, so there's probably a standard list of topics like you guys talked about, and then there's maybe emerging topics or current topics that need to be, that maybe some people know about and don't. So Steve, do you have any questions about how to kind of respond to this? How you schedule or do this?
Yes, a couple. One, I echoing Kelly, I don't want that to be lost on some. I know we've got board members, and I appreciate your consideration of impact on staff. Our number one, the reason we're here is for you. And so, if one member wanted to come down to Olympia on board meeting day, and they had 1 or 2 topics that were really important to them, if they wanted us to brief them on, we do that happily. Because for us, at least, then that is we're accomplishing. If the meeting's canceled, we've got other things that we can work on, but our primary focus is on you. And so if there's anything that we can do for you, you're not putting us out or creating a, it's not, that's what we want to do. So think of it that way. Do your work, both on topics where there might be a number of members that are interested in. You brought up a very healthy list here from the federal national issues with other state plans. There'll be some leg updates. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to cut off the discussion. We've been working on a number of different ideas for other technologies. Laptops, for instance, and iPads. Step 1 of a 10-step technology plan, if you will, that could involve Skyping and both for you and for the public. As we what we think of the Thursdays and meeting and put that out on our website. So that was really encouraging to hear some of those same ideas coming from you, which they're kind of wrestling with and wondering, if that's an area where the board might want to go to kind of prepare for that and sort of hear that. That's very helpful. What we'll do is we'll start working on some ideas and talk to you further before the session starts, so that when January, yeah, I don't want to alarm the senator about how close session is. But yeah, the idea, our first meeting during session is only like 3 months away, January meeting. That's kind of, so having some ideas about ahead of time that we can maybe talk with you about at your December meeting in terms of an action plan for session based on some of the feedback we get and maybe what feedback from the whatever December meeting. But yeah, we'll have a plan going into the session.
So one question I had is, so why do we cancel meetings just during the legislative session? And Pastor Kelly gave me some of those things. One is that we have senator and representatives, and so the other thing is, the other question was that staff are often called and they may not be available during the meeting, and some of us individually have ties to the legislative session or process, and they may not be available. And so I just want to, is that the main reason that we don't meet?
Yeah, I have another question.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Yeah, and honestly, I think to some extent, some of that's changed over the years. As the focus of the board, looking at it from the staff perspective over a 10-year viewpoint, we have become very decision-oriented in a lot of ways. And if you don't have a forum, you can't make decisions. And so right away, for a lot of members, it's like, I don't need to be there, which then feeds into the whole, there's not going to be a quorum. Very possibly there might be 3 members. That, but that's at the board as a whole. And so what we haven't done until now is kind of take that step back and say, well, forget about the forest, let's talk about individual trees. And even if there isn't a purpose in terms of board decision making that can be accomplished, we're going to there's a quorum should be accomplished if you've only got 6 members. None of the legislatures, for instance, you don't have that same balance on the board. Where employers and police and fire and the legislature and all there have equal opportunity to participate. There's still some other purposes we can do some other things that aren't decision making and support the act. That's a new kind of phenomenon, if you will, that's emerged over the last couple of years. Part of it is a long session. I think to some extent that when 6 months between meetings, that's where it's home. Boy, that's a long time. That what decision making is at least my perspective. That the length of sessions and decision making organization board kind of as it used to be. Go back, we were only cancel because sessions were shorter and even if the session was still going on, but it was just the educational, you might only cancel one or two a year.
Yeah, I went back to all your meetings back in 2004. It's been about 3 to 5. 5 is the most. Yeah. So sometimes it was like 2, maybe 2 meetings. But then the first year, you guys were meeting like every other week, it seems like, as you guys were creating the plan.
Other comments, questions? If not, lunch is ready. Why don't we, instead of 12:25 become lunch now, and come back at 12:15 or 1:15, 1:10. Let's make it 1:10 and come back, and we'll be a little bit ahead of schedule. Okay?
What it's got to do to reach plan numbers, reach people out there. Part of the thing is, it's like, a lot of them, if they're under 50 years old, really don't care if you reach them. They don't have skin in the game yet, they're not aware. It's just sort of a constant energy out there, static energy, the outcome upon the left return. So that's an issue, is delivering things. When I bring it back here, how do we get to them? One of the things is the door response. You got to make sure that stays with skin. People don't really know as much as we'd like them to on the stuff, just don't need it. I mean, that's even less of a reception. The Left Two Board website, that's good. Another way of reaching out, so we actually got fans, we got wires at this point. Public speaking, Steve, that's one of our largest assets, actually, having to get out there and do things, talk to people in groups and tell them exactly why we are. And the big thing has to do with managing expectations. I mean, that's a chunk. The other part is to tell them actually how well we're doing here. And sometimes that's, we mentioned that's a little bit of a trouble because the conflict of message for doing so well, we don't have one. So I mean, we want to tell everybody, yeah, we're doing great, but, just relative to everybody else.
Jeff, to what degree, I think I heard Steve say before, how much of that? Is there a degree, a limit on that? I mean, how often do you perceive Steve not doing that?
I think Steve regularly attends things with law enforcement officers and firefighters. We have regular meetings, and as much as that's educational and helpful for those of us that are stakeholders here representing the rest of the group, I don't think that the employers get enough hearing from Steve, or for that matter, the other large stakeholders of the legislature. I don't know how to create that opportunity, but particularly employer groups, fire commissioners we identified, sheriffs and police chiefs, fire chiefs, and then AWC. And those are big main counties, big stakeholders there, and I don't know that Steve gets the opportunity, whether or not we need to solicit that opportunity or whether or not the stakeholders here can create that opportunity.
So do you think he should be soliciting those opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's
Number of things to get there.
Do you have any questions on that, Steve?
No, that was one of the things I was talking about with the other group, and so I used an example, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, the city of Renton. They weren't a member of LEOFF, but they wanted somebody to come up and talk to them about what the board was doing. And I did that. And it's like, is that the kind of thing that you guys would be okay with? Is that, do you feel like that? Yeah, I want to make sure that we're using our resources, including me, in line. And that, so this sounds like very clear guidance for me that is something not only that you want more of, actually.
Well, Kelly and Jack are going to tell you as part of the executive meeting, what the expectations are for staff. I got to tell you, we talked about that a long time ago, and that's you're getting out there and putting a face in front of people, actually engage with you, listen to you, versus read something passively, which is another newsletter that comes through with an identical heading. The same article, just the repetitive aspect. There's nothing else that's novel. Gets in front and gets a message across, and potentially it's going to engage people that are under 50 years old. This is not going to be that. You have the potential. The issue we're dealing with, Glenn, you're spot on. Everything else we do could be tactically perfect, picture perfect, all the way through, and all of a sudden you run up against public resistance, and don't waste your time. The legislature's time going into this stuff. That's what it's political beast. You have the potential out there, at least within this group, to start reframing the conversation, and that's huge.
Tom, you mentioned whether or not, we rely upon Steve this week to let us in the staff, if the work, if our desire to have Steve out there creates disadvantages or workload issues within the office, then that's for Steve to report back to the board.
Right. I think it was kind of, just some of our conversations is, I'm not sure how much to be out there, and he likes being out there, and at some point, what's the real expectation? So this is coming across like, absolutely, yes, still needs to be responsible for leading the staff, but this is kind of like, yes, we'll do that. And so, yeah, that's sort of things up quite a bit.
Yeah, hypothetically, if I got a call from the police chiefs to say, we want to talk to you about this career change issue, will you come out and talk to our executive board? And I would have said, yes, now I know. I don't have to worry about you guys coming back and saying, I don't recall the police chiefs being on the Left 2 board. Why are you talking to them? So that, yes, your perspective on this will help as those things kind of come up in the future.
They're all one few numbers. They're both of them.
Well, they're policymakers really, or influential people, just like city managers are. They should be hearing this stuff. If we're to follow our mission plan, the mission plan, one of the big chunks is to actually increase benefits for members. I mean, all this is almost like an interstate commerce act kind of thing. It gives you the ability to go different places and do things that aren't specifically defined. So you go out there and accomplish what your core mission is. I mean, that's sort of where we're in the conversation a bit through. That all fits.
And not wait for them to call us.
Bingo.
We call them. Hey, we want to tell you about what to do. We'll tell you about the accomplishments. We'll tell you about why we're one of the top retirement systems in the nation.
SCPP, same thing, justifying committee. They want to have a number of people who are going to be there. It's nothing else, it's the educational aspect. We just get out there, it change the framing of the conversation.
In our group, we also talked about that it shouldn't just be students. We wanted to discuss about, give an example of a group. Special board has regional reps or goes out. And so I think it's using all the staff resources. You don't want to just be jumping on the plane every single time you go somewhere, but let's get that message out. And I think I'm hearing also that you're going to decide what being proactive, not just waiting for that conversation, but there's some parts of the state that probably haven't been talked to, or groups that probably would like to be talked to if they knew that was available.
Steve comes out on a regular basis and talks to the state council firefighters, walkouts, FOPs, who are represented by e-board members of their local organization. So are we touching and informing directly, like my local, I have, 6, 8 e-board members, but I have 188 other members at home. Was there been any consideration or thought given to when he does give a first presentation to walk-offs or state council to have it webcast or have it video, where we could put it on our website, be able to, as a media section, that members could go to, even, something where, the Tailboard firefighter on his off time or after hours can open it up and listen to the presentation.
We have actually, leaving aside the video thing, for instance, I talked earlier about step one being one of the things that we're talking about cranking up would be at least a blog on the website with regular topics about whatever is current. And that would, again, that's just using the current method of the website. So it's not a new tool, but it's maybe making that tool a little bit more functional in terms of reaching out to these people, but just with different topics. Detroit was hot in the news, and so people were wondering, is Seattle the next Detroit? And you could do something real quick on to say no. But those kind of things. That's one of the things we've talked about. The video taping and then broadcasting, similar to what TVW does, of board meetings or even of just educational presentations. That's also something we're working towards building that capacity to. So you could have. We've actually got now a YouTube channel out on the board website, and we did what's called a soft rollout. It's out there now. We populated it with a few videos that the actuary's office has done on Pensions 101 and Pensions 102 to try to just ease into that, even if it's not our own materials. And we're working with the Department of Retirement Systems to figure out, do they have some things that we can use, and then also creating our own and what those would be. And that will be something you can plan on working on with us in the next interim.
So this would leverage every time you go out, a major one, you go out and have it. A lot of people do it, it's not as big a deal. They just, get it done. It may not be the best quality, but it's out there. That message is available for people. So, okay, great. That's clear direction. Just continue.
Continue writing articles for publication, rather than just have the same thing come out again. Maybe we can start headlining some of the issues that we want to reframe the conversation with, where the
number one national grid system, number one best funded system in the country, or all Washington state systems, are top 10%, and we're number one, we're the best of the best. Something out there, just a 20-point, 30-point headline, something else that they look at before they throw it away, where we're changing things. Stakeholder representatives and attending meetings, we just talked about that, and media releases. As long as we're trying to get a bigger footprint out there, PR, so have a PR release out there to say that we've been really well kind of thing this last year, we're number one again for the second time. Do something out there to maybe the media pick up on something like this, because it is so controversial. Like we all mentioned here, we're fighting Fox News, and we've got everybody else out there because it's who's framing the message differently. We're trying to show exactly what the state that we're in and how confident we're in. So I mean, just again, this is all about looking long term over that 4-year plan you're talking about. Some of the very first steps out there are attempting to educate the public through things on the stage. That's kind of where we stop.
Oh. Okay, Doug, I'm sure you wanted to ask this question. Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered if you invited TBW to come do a board meeting. They I think they're always looking for something to do, potentially reruns.
They are, and
Might save the expense of trying to settle this one.
no, and I appreciate that. There is some technical, the SIB boardroom that we use, TBW can't use that one. So, but for instance, it may mean then that in the future, we come to you guys with a choice. You want to continue to have your meetings in the SIB boardroom with the understanding then that they're not going to be easily broadcast, or if they're recorded, it'll be with one type of quality. Or would you like us to pursue moving the board meetings down on the legislative campus like the Select Committee on Pension Policy does, and have potentially then they'd be recorded by TBW. The SCPP meeting yesterday was broadcast live by TBW, and it's out on their website now. It's an archive. So, that might be a low-budget way to accomplish that kind of a goal, but it would be something you guys would have to decide, because you'd be meeting in a different place, different facilities, etc. But those are the kind of things, we'll talk more about that. But as far as TBW would love to do more of this. So that's an excellent suggestion.
We didn't buy a new camera this year. They put full court press on for them, we didn't do it.
From this group, any other comments or?
One other thing on this writing articles, we talked about maybe reaching a different audience if we allowed one of the board members to contribute as opposed to the same people. Maybe somebody from Spokane might have an interest in Wally.
In terms of writing articles for the dual response? Okay, that I see.
Thought.
Is there a specific date you want Wally to have?
See how it grows. An idea.
So that's turned into action, Other comments?
I have a question for the senator, because we talked about the legislature being one of the major stakeholder groups. And is there a way for Steve to approach them personally, or what's your opinion about if the board potentially crafted a regular series of sort of short educational mailings to go to their homes, or their offices? Do you think that would be of value?
Try to get the legislature, you'd have to go through, I think, ways and means to make a presentation to that body. I believe there's some value to a mailing. It's awful easy to read emails, and so I think maybe a hard copy mail might be the way to reach numbers.
And just in terms of an educational function, we talk about the same things we talked about, or a series of issues talking about our funded status and, other topics of interest.
Yeah, if you get ways and means, it has to be early in the session, probably more of an educational thing, unless it's issues later on, there's probably not time.
That's an excellent point. Matt Smith every year does a State of the State Pensions address, to both Senate Ways and Means and House Appropriations Committees. But he really focuses on the problems. And this is something I talked to Matt about specifically. He focuses on the challenges or the issues for that session. You guys aren't a problem. So what it tends to happen is you don't get talked about at all in that State of the State. He's not saying, you got these great problems. They're doing okay in left too. You know, you're not a mention at all. Or there'll be a discussion of, we've got these funding shortfalls and rates are projected and it's going to have this impact on GFS. And you have to actually look in the footnotes to say, yeah, not left two. Left two rates are not increasing. And, you know, so that type of challenge. But then again, in terms of reaching out to the committees to say, or Matt, say, Matt, can you give us 1 minute, or reaching out to the committees to say, if you're going to get a State of the State from the actuary, what about from the left two board? No, this is more from their staff. The actuary is legislative staff. We can respect, you know, we can ask Matt to kind of incorporate left two into his. There hasn't been a legislative appetite for something separate. They don't get a lot of those from state agencies, including us. And again, they're interested primarily in problems in session, taking their time in a committee meeting to tell them, we're doing a great job. That a lot of them don't, they don't see that as a good use of their time. But that message hasn't been getting out, and it does need to get out. And there are occasionally then some legislators, they'll hear that presentation, and they don't look at the footnotes. And so they come away and they'll say, what the heck's going on with left lane 2? I hear our rates are going to record highs. We're like, no, that was talking about TERS and PERS. Look on page 16 of the presentation you got, and you'll see the left two rates are, you know, not projected to increase at all. So I can deal with those on an individual. There's been individual members that said, would you be willing to come and talk to our caucus? Yes. Would you be willing to come and talk in this particular meeting? Yes. And then sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. An individual member may be interested in having me come and talk to their caucus, and when they talk to their caucus leadership, they don't feel that that's a good use of caucus time. And so, but my answer historically has always been, regardless of who it was asking, my answer is always yes. And so part of what I have been, part of this was sort of checking in with you guys to make sure that met your expectations. Because there are times it's like, Steve just went into the caucus room, and you know, I get the kind of the stink eye, if you will. It's like, who's he talking to, and what's he talking? You guys, I think, understand that, and I hope you do, that everybody gets the exact same message. You know, a lot of times, staff know this. The presentation that I do for walk-ups and the presentation I do for the State Council of Firefighters are typically identical, especially if they happen to be, like, you know, if the meetings happen to be within a couple of weeks of each other, they are identical. Change the heading and that's about it. Sometimes topically something will change, you know, a month later. But this is excellent feedback for me and for the rest of the team that you are okay with us sharing your message with a broader audience. In fact, you not just passively, but you want us to kind of be proactive about getting that message out to a broader audience. That's good feedback for us.
And do mailings, simple, one page, one side, bullet points. That way it can't look at it.
Let's hear from this group, the second group.
We split this up in a couple of ways. We asked ourselves, first of all, what information isn't already getting communicated? What? You know, it's not just what does the board need to do to reach 10 members, but with what information. And then we asked, well, whatever that information might be, where do we not have a mechanism already in place?
Okay.
We came up with two. On the members that aren't connected to this process, which is the vast bulk of the last two folks, what we really came up with is kind of the DRS. There's two things they need. Anything they want to know about pensions, DRS already has better than we do. And if you think we're going to out-communicate Martha Frost here, because she's driving that organization to do nothing that she's good at. So we would recommend that whatever we can do to encourage just the rank and file, the first thing you ought to do is figure out how to sign on to DRS. Oh, and by the way, learn about deferred compensation. Because that's a really big deal that we aren't necessarily in the middle of, but it's certainly that one of the ways we don't feel like we need a lot of information on once again DRS. Then we talked about, well, what about the stakeholder groups that represent these folks, and well, who are the ones that aren't getting talked to? We talked, it's really police. The firefighters have one union, the police have three, plus they have all guilds. The guilds are really tough. There's a lot of them, and some are really big organizations. So for them, we recommended, pretty much what we already did on, which is, well, talk to them. If you can, get the whole county force and firefighters and city and county. If they want to get talked to, tell them whatever they want. And we did hit upon the idea of, I think David mentioned it, that there's another entity out there that does kind of a similar thing. It's the Public Works Board. They have a ton of stakeholders, municipal corporations basically, that they have to talk to. They're not particularly well organized. So what they do is they split the state up into regions by staff. Oftentimes, it's not Steve having to fly to Spokane. It's somebody they just know how to call on the phone. It's a little bit more intimate with their particular regions. They can give them the answer they want. Or maybe go out and get a presentation. It's not like Ken or the folks around here don't know how to get a presentation. It's just to do. Okay? So those are our two suggestions.
Great. Other comments from other members in the group? Questions? Comments on that, Steve?
No, it was good. The table over there, they had some questions. They had me kind of come over and answer them and participate.
You're a member of that. Okay.
Yes,
great.
and this was exactly the kind of feedback that we were hoping to get. This is
very, very clear and proactive, yes. So, all right, sorry, David.
Add one more thing to that. In our conversation was also, as Steve and the staff go out to these groups, is at least I thought it would be helpful to get that information back. What are people interested about? What are they concerned about? And how do we get that feedback? And there were some earlier conversations about surveying our members, but also surveying the public. We just need to know what's going on out there. We each have our own little areas, and you guys are probably more connected in different ways. But it would be nice to have that feedback as we look at what information we need to make decisions.
Great. So we're right on time. We're going to have one more work session, and then Steve and the staff are going to come back and say, here's what we heard in a very top three things we heard, and share that with you all bit, and we'll call it a day. What was that? And then we also need a feedback form. But let's take a break from now to 2:25, and then we're going to do the last work.
So the public needs to hear the reason why Left Plan 2 is a wonderful plan, or well-run, or all the other things they don't have. What the public needs to hear is why pensions make sense, why defined benefit plans make sense at all. We were just talking at the table here, like most people don't understand that for every dollar paid out to pension benefit, a dime comes from the public. A dime comes from the employee, 80% comes from interest. That's a pretty important fact. Is the left board in a position to educate the public about that sort of stuff? I would argue that you almost expose yourself more. Now, David was just saying, as they were talking here, as we were writing this up, that a possibility might be to arm the police and the firefighters with that kind of simple information, so that their one-on-one contacts, when people are telling you that you're overpaid while you're saving their life or something like that, you might spill that, yeah, well, actually not so much, and this is why. That's what we can come up with. We're not being facetious. I'm just not sure there's that role.
Let me kind of make it practical in terms of a feedback thing.
City of Seattle's pension plan, completely different from PERS or whatever, is not as well funded as LEFF Plan 2. There's articles in the Seattle Times regarding getting rid of the plan. The president of the Seattle Firefighter Union contacts Steve and says, I want to write a letter to the editor in response to their article in their editorial board. Will you review my letter to make sure that I'm factually accurate about LEFF 2 when I talk about this is an example of a well-run defined benefit plan and why that's a good thing? Is that something then that you guys would feel okay with in terms of me supporting? Because that's ultimately what it would come down to is I'm like, yeah, okay, I can, you know, here's the actuarial Val report, here's those kind of things. Left to, you know, only 10% of the money comes from the public, or dime on the dollar. Here's how many is the funding. You know, that kind of information, knowing that that's what it's going to be used for is as a letter to the editor in the Seattle Times. If it came back that, hey, Kenny Stewart got his information for this letter from Steve Nelson, is that going to be one of these things where you as board members are going to feel like Steve Nelson was acting outside of his role in supporting the board? Just to get it like a real practical kind of example.
Is the information accurate?
Yes. That's what he would ask for, is accurate information.
It is what it is. That's accurate.
That's all disposable.
It's all public information and conveying. There may be some things that you could bring to the board of saying, this is the statement that I make, and, you know, if you want to make sure you wrap yourself up and make sure that you have the full support, saying, these are the statements that we make, or we're public. When the editorial, you know, and I actually brought that up with the Seattle Times editorial board, they're kind of just pissed off that their industry is going down the tubes, and they want everyone to go down the tubes with them. I mean, and so that's what we're dealing with. I mean, so, some of my coworkers are saying, you know, sorry, you know, we've been managing our funds, but it's the public funds, and so that's where this gets in. But if you would feel better about that, I think you're right, though, it's public information. But if there are statements that you want to make sure, then bring them to us. I mean, but I think everything that you bring to us usually is things that you've already told us, and we support. I think a hard part on this one was getting back to Glenn's point about a national debate. This is much bigger than LEFF Plan 2 in the state of Washington and what the issue is here. It's a much broader conversation about public pensions, compensation, public employees. That's a bigger one. And I, for a piece of that, I don't know for the leader of that, I think we have a good story to tell, but I think it gets mixed up in all these other things.
Okay. Let's go to this. We all agree that Joe isn't it this time. I see a big no on there. It looks like
We began our debate by saying yes, no, and yes, yes. That's how we started. So, and then we got down to answering that question, going back to the summary. So we kind of back and forth, and we kind of arrived at outreach. We don't believe is necessary, and it's a daunting task to be outreach for public pensions just from LEFF Plan 2. In fact, I think one of the comments while I gave was we need 11 more people, the staff, to be outreach for the defense of defined benefit plans. So we looked at these questions and the considerations, and we discussed the risks that, from our perspective, $50,000 to $60,000 a year pension may not be adequate, but that might be $50,000 or $60,000 more than somebody who's a taxpayer gets or is looking to receive in their future. So there are risks that are inherent with a higher funds profile. And then we talked about, media releases, polling, press releases, just real briefly, went back to the discussion we had last time. And we said we really need to be part of a larger national, support a national effort to
to define, that we can't do this on our own, but that when Steve mentioned his comment, we had a good discussion about that as well, that we want Steve to have the authority from the board to respond to some of these things, to have the authority, the board's authority to respond, but not be proactively, outreach and doing things that we believe are probably beyond our capacity, although Steve will do a good job, probably well beyond our capacity to be able to do it.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Other comments or discussion on this? It seems like you guys seem pretty clear on this one. And yes, no, you're up there. Okay. No,
I do want to share one creative idea. I mean, it bubbled up other ideas and actually this feels very defensive, that we're defending what we have. And is there some way that we could be on the offense of saying we want these kind of benefits to actually be Glenn brought up the idea of saying, why don't we push for, State of Washington has a good system, has a good investment. What if we open that up to every Washington State resident? What if, I think about this the example I give is like municipal water supplies. People always think they need bottled water. And I think it was Spokane or someone else said, we should bottle Seattle. If we have great water, we should bottle this because it's so good. It's taking that whole different thing of saying, we've got a great system, more people should be participating in this. If you brought your own money in, our state investment board is probably going to do better than most of you in the private sector, so come on in, open it up. I think that's a creative idea. I actually kind of like that, but just kind of takes it to the next step, and we'd like all Washington residents to benefit from well-managed plans and things like that.
Going from, you want us all to have as little as you do, from police and firefighters standing up to the people in the state of Washington saying, we want you all to have what we have.
Yeah, it's a different perspective, turning it around to the offense, which is what he thinks.
And then if you're all out there beating up on the legislature to get more money to the public, you answer to us at home. Right?
Okay. All right, well, great work, you guys. Steve and the staff have been outside and summarizing a couple of things that they've heard, and then want to elicit anything that they may have not heard that you want to make sure they have. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, we came up with 4 things that we felt like we heard pretty strongly from the earlier presentations. One, there was consensus about, you are in agreement that you want to find some use for those meeting time during session. And we'll work with you over the next couple of months leading up to session to kind of define that or refine that concept a little bit further, but that was one thing. Another thing is you were very clear that you are interested in us proactively reaching out to stakeholders, other groups, chiefs, commissioners.
About the use of the word outreach, it's still kind of smart.
As long as they're somehow related to Left 2, it's all good. If they're Joe Public, they're on their own. Got it. The other thing is there was a lot of support for us to continue to look for ways to incorporate new technology into the services that we deliver both to the board members and to the plan members. And then finally, we felt like there was a consensus amongst all of you that you are looking for ways to incorporate more discussion into the board meetings themselves, whether that's, we'll talk with you about some of those ideas, but whether it's workshops similar to what you guys did today, taking, different topics and putting them in the meeting versus the afternoon, maybe the grouping kind of a thing, taking decisions here and discussion here. But this type of discussion, the type of discussion that you had today, is something that you found valuable and that you want more of. So those were the 4 things that we felt like we heard from the earlier discussions, and
is there something else out there that you really want us to add to this? That's where we're at. Jack?
I don't see the word communication up there anywhere.
That was good, because we actually did talk about that. That was on everybody's list, and we weren't sure whether it fit into here or both, or whether we should replace both of these with just a number 3 that was communication. We weren't sure whether that was is that too generic? And so specifically, when you say communication, what do you mean by that?
I think communication with the board, we talked about weekly or bi-weekly communication with you that you send out to the board, not only during session, but you're all year long.
That's good. More communication to the board.
So let me ask, maybe to clarify, you said bi-weekly or monthly? Is there a
Weekly or bi-weekly.
weekly or bi-weekly? Is there and what kind of?
That seems more than I would expect, unless there was something really actively going on, but I don't expect a weekly update from Steve about this week I did that. Monthly, maybe when we're not meeting or something like that, or things like that. I just have different expectations. Unless something's actively going on, we want to tell you, and I think that we've kind of given that, because when we go to do presentations, we do want to know that. So if we hear about it, but I would expect I don't have that expectation, that every 2 weeks you're going to tell me what you've been doing.
What about Kelly?
I don't think it's unreasonable for Steve to provide information whenever it's available about things that he's done. I know he does it monthly. At our meetings, his director's report, he said, I did this, I did that. But the one point I want to make is on this communication to the board, it is a two-way street. You can, nobody on this entire staff that I've worked with over the 10 years I've been here has ever failed to discuss any issue I've ever had with them. So I think if we want more communication with our staff about board stuff, I think we can get that. It's really up, a lot of that is up to us as board members, that we can get whatever we want from it if we just ask. So, I mean, communication with the board is great, whether it's an email. I think we all probably, if we get something from the left board, there isn't such an inundated amount of emails that we get from them that we wouldn't just read it. But I think we can do a better job as trustees, as board members, in getting more from our staff. All we have to do is that. And they've never hesitated, and I've noticed that with the State Investment Board. I've been on there now, and the staff is very responsive to board members at both levels. So I want to make sure, before we leave today, everybody knows that you have a great resource here, and they'll answer any questions you have. I'm looking around at all the staff here, and they've always been very receptive to requests for information or time you need. I'll call Steve, and I don't know this issue very well. I don't get it. Matt made a presentation. I don't understand it. Can you help me understand it? And Paul, same way. Him over the years. It's always been that way. So.
But I do want to, Jack and I just gave 2 different examples of what our expectations are. So that's we're only 2 people.
Yeah.
What are other people's expectations?
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to ask as well. More to hear from some of the rest of you. Where do you guys sit on terms of this? Do you want more frequently than monthly? Do you want it monthly when there's not board meetings? How are your expectations either being met or not met with the way things are going right now?
I said monthly or when there's a topic of interest or something. something that drives you, or something you've been involved in, or something you think we ought to be aware of. I mean, I'm comfortable leaving that to your discretion.
Substance. Not necessarily see a report for the sake of receiving one. It doesn't really say anything about that.
Yeah.
You know, when you go out to stakeholders and provide some written documentation to them, maybe CCing us or allow, have the ability to share with us. Just have it, hey, I went to, state chiefs, fire chiefs, and give a presentation. This attached is my presentation. Like that. Unless there's an issue that comes up.
Maybe during the legislative session, sometimes, changes on the daily, it seems that maybe more regular updates there, if there are things that are, and maybe it's an important thing to say, nothing's going on right now. But I think I agree, Mark, that you were correct about that.
It doesn't have to be formal at all. I mean, like go responsible, just something you can hang out with, a couple paragraphs once a week. And I think David's right on about their session. Stuff is happening so fast, so dynamic, and you have things that are unexpected that happen along the way that would be nice to have that as a sort of a benchmark where we might need to have going back to session 1 to session 2, and we talked about meetings. If we need to have a meeting, if there's something out there that has changed dramatically, we need to have a decision on. You have that kind of a running awareness during session. So the rest of the year, though, as a volunteer, I think that it'd be nice to have the monthly meetings and the information we get in advance. It seems to much different. Good thing, just no surprises.
Yeah.
Maybe just come up here that you had some pushback, or give us some people have information, or we got some other sources early, or just.
Right. The new board member, for instance, I hear from, I get a call from Wally saying, hey, I just got appointed to the board, what have I gotten into? And then that not being shared with the rest of the board, that, oh, by the way, I heard that Wally is a new board member. And then some, I don't know whether it was through Wallacoms or however word gets out, some board members know that Wally's on the board and some don't. And that didn't reflect well on me. That's an example of the kind of significant event that I think you guys are talking about in terms of something that should have been shared before the next regular monthly administrative update, and that was significant enough. It should have been shared, right away.
Changes in staff.
Yeah.
Is another one. Kim used to be the deputy director in Illinois. You walk in and think he's just an analyst or whatever he was doing, and all of a sudden he's the deputy director. I think that's a time for celebration for all of us. Ryan gets hired. I mean, he's a job when he gets out of school. And got to support his mom here for 4 months.
Right, it
And Paul, I mean, you got a new right-hand man there in Paul, and I think that's important. I didn't know he was working for the board when he came by.
Good example. Yeah, those are all really good examples. That's helpful.
And unfortunately, we can't all be as lucky as Kelly to be able to just pop in and ring your bell on a regular.
You can't pop in from Kennewick. You can't always call. But I also I understand the difference between, you don't know what you don't know, so it's hard for you to pick up the phone and say, tell me what I don't know.
That'd be a long conversation.
I usually ask him, what have you done for cops today?
So that I get. It's the proactive piece of it. I'm not gonna bombard you guys with weekly emails saying nothing's changed. But I think these examples are helpful for both me and for the team now to help keep me accountable so that they can say things. I tend to, one of my shortcomings is I tend to be very task-oriented and I'm focused on something. And so somebody will come to me, Pam, Jessica, hey, there's a new board member. Maybe that'd be a good thing to let the board know. Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right, it would. And so for them to hear those kind of things as well now, we'll all be able to help make that happen better. It's not just on me to constantly be thinking, especially during session. I think you guys will all appreciate it. It is a very dynamic environment, and you could almost do, an hour by hour, blow by blow thing. These things are constantly changing, depending on the timing of it all. But those types of updates often cause more problems than they cause solutions, because then it just creates this idea that everybody needs to be reacting to stuff hour by hour, especially with the legislators. If I'm sending Representative Foley an email every hour with a blow-by-blow on left two, it will be not many hours before he stops reading those emails altogether. Not except, of course, he doesn't allow for that kind of stuff. But more regular updates, so that it's not, well, we'll give you an update on what happened 5 months from now when it's all over. That's not going to cut it either. And there will be things, new bills being introduced, just putting them out on the website, that's too soft. So you guys know, maybe if a bill's being heard, or that's come up in the past, I tend to sometimes rely on the different organizations that all support you. So, am I supposed to tell you about a hearing, or is Walcott supposed to tell you about a hearing, or the Association of Cities supposed to tell you about a hearing? Yes, all of us should be. It doesn't hurt that you hear about it from more than one source, and that was sort of getting clear on those kind of expectations. Our job, we love, we enjoy is meeting or exceeding whatever it is that you guys ask for. None of the stuff that you ask for is unreasonable at all. And so just getting clear on what you want, that helps us give you, what you're looking for. This meeting today is extremely helpful for all of us with respect to that. You guys, I commend you for the level of discussion that you had, the openness of the discussion that you had. Jack was very kind to me, and he said, Steve, don't think you got away with anything. I know that this was strategic planning, even though you never used the word strategic planning. He was gracious enough not to punch me in the nose, because he told me the next time we did any strategic planning, he was going to punch me in the nose. This was very helpful. I hope it was helpful for you in that kind of planning sense. But in terms of the meeting your expectations sense, I honestly don't think that this meeting could have gone any better than it did. You guys were involved from minute one when you started talking about your, why the thing you felt the most proud of as far as being on the board. From minute one, your engagement level was extraordinary. And the benefit of this kind of format to get that kind of discussion was clear. That's part of what we were talking about. Maybe this kind of format facilitates that level of discussion that you had today much better than the typical PowerPoint presentation with the slide at the end that says you have any questions. So we learned a lot today, and I want to thank you guys for that. And that's it. I think that's it. Oh, yes. Before I forget, we've got 3 handouts for you. One is calendar a rough idea of what's on the agenda for November and December. Another one is the meeting calendar for next year. And the final item is a evaluation of this particular meeting, this particular session. For those of you who are still here, please fill that out. Your feedback will be appreciated and helpful.